So.
And you are here for SCW, the wrestling channel here on YouTube.com. You may be listening to it as well online on Spotify as well. It's time for This Week in Wrestling. Going to be talking about your favorite companies. Going to be talking about WWE. We've got AEW. We've also got Impact Wrestling and much, much more on the way during the show. Going to be talking about such topics as AEW Dynamite, potentially going to 3 hours. Another pay-per-view going to be added just 1 week after SummerSlam. And of course, we're going to be talking some of the big talking points of what have come out of the shows of Raw, AEW this week. But without further ado, George, you're our guest today. Thank you for coming on the show once again. It's great to have you on board.
No problem, Steve. Thank you for having me. I hope you're well.
Yeah, very well, thank you. As I say, it's been another great week of professional wrestling, and I think we should kick things off with AEW Dynamite. Some breaking news that's broke today. It's via ringsidenews.com that this news has broken. Now, we've known for a little while that AEW's wanted to add a third hour of programming to weekly TV, but was unsure where they wanted to place it in and stuff. But there has been a news report that's come today that AEW could be made into a 3-hour show for Dynamite each and every Wednesday. I was wondering your thoughts on this, because for me, I'm not a fan of the idea of 3-hour shows. We've had it with Raw in the past. We've had it with WCW Night Show. For me, it's not something I'm so keen on. But I wondered your thoughts on it.
Yeah. There's a couple of cons. So I think the pros are, it'll be a great chance for us to see talent that maybe is not getting on the show at the moment. Another pro, the fact that it will give them a real extra time to be able to have more quality matches like there have been. I think the negatives of it, though, are that's another hour a week we're going to have to find to watch wrestling, which will be hard. I think another negative is the fact that this sort of totally changes the whole ratings war again. I wonder if AEW goes 3 hours, will NXT go to 3 hours? And if that's the case, that's a lot of wrestling on a Wednesday night, isn't it?
I didn't even think of that. I mean, the idea of NXT being 3 hours, I mean, it's just like you say, to fit everything in would be a struggle. You would literally have to prioritize. Now, I'm sure for those that are probably in the United States, that would probably not be such the worst thing in the world, because it's in a good time zone for them. For us in the UK, on that time zone, the Greenwich Mean Time, you look at it and say, well, I mean, we're not going to stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning to watch these shows. So you've got to find 6 hours of programming the following day. It's so much to keep up with. Like you say, it just feels too much. But as well, we talk about AEW, and one comment I posted today on our Facebook page, Chris Daly actually gave a reply to us and thought that perhaps the roster wasn't deep enough for AEW to do this on a weekly basis. Would you agree with that, or do you think that perhaps with the amount of tag teams AEW's got, that maybe they could cover that extra hour?
I think if it's just literally 1 extra hour, I think they should cover it, particularly with all the releases in WWE as well recently. If AEW do decide to sign up anymore, I think that they set the roster to a certain point, but I think the roster's quite deep really at the moment.
Well, they do have a few, and we seem to be getting a few of these challengers coming in each and every week for the AEW Championship. I mean, Warhorse was on this week. We had Eddie Kingston last week as well. So we have had a few special guests that have come into AEW. But I mean, the newest signing, which is actually a WWE release that you're referring to, there is one other Zack Ryder. Of course, Matt Cardona is the name he's going to be going by now. And he made his debut saving Cody this week after his championship defense. The Dark Order made the jump after the match. It was 2 of the lesser members, I believe, of the Dark Order. Of course, to say Cardona came in and made the save. He looked absolutely jacked, to put it bluntly. I mean, the guy has clearly been working out since his release and waiting for his time to get onto Dynamite. Do you see a big future for him now he's hitting AEW?
Yeah, I really hope so. I think he's got a really great opportunity here to run the WWE, if that makes sense. Continuing WWE, apart from a couple of bells, he's been booked as a joke and a jobber. Now you're immediately associating with Cody. I think that's a great move. I think him and Cody will have a great story to tell down the line. I think that's going to be a great feud somewhere down the line. But yeah, it's great to see sort of Matt Cardona getting this other chance, really, getting the secondary chance. I think maybe he can actually come in AEW, which would be nice to see. He deserves it. I think he's always been in wrestling, if that makes like ever since even as a kid he liked wrestling and stuff. It's great to see sort of somebody that's almost a fan be a wrestler in that respect.
Absolutely. Well, he's got his podcast as well. He's got all the action figures that he does the promotions with that as well. So he is big and heavily into his pro wrestling. And like you say, he's been around, it feels forever. He was an edgehead back in the day, wasn't he, with Kurt Hawkins, where they had their breakthrough on SmackDown. And he was massively, he got himself over as well, which I think was the appeal for Cody to bring him in. Of course, he had his own YouTube channel going on as well, where he was crowning himself the internet champion, got massively over. I mean, remember back to Survivor Series 2011, everyone was chanting for Ryder, even more than CM Punk, who won the championship, the start of his 434-day reign at that point. It was Zack Ryder that was the most over in the building, screaming, "We want Ryder, we want Ryder." And it's a film that literally that momentum got cut from WWE immediately with the John Cena and Kane storyline in 2012. And he'd not longer become United States champion at the end of 2011 as well. It's just a shame to see how it got so derailed, but what could have been and perhaps what could be, now he's in AEW. Like you say, potentially a big future head. Could you see him continue as a friend of Cody? Of course, they're meant to be real life friends, or do you see eventually a rival there?
It will be a rivalry. I think not straight away. I'd say give it maybe 3 to 4 months. So I think they'll be feuding, which will be good. Makes sense. I think Cody is going down a slight heel turn at the moment. To see Cody going heel and sort of Matt Cardona being the face, I think that's probably the route they go down, the long-term plan probably.
Would be fantastic. Would you see that could be a good route then, that maybe Cardona is the guy that eventually beats Cody and becomes TNT champion?
Yes, I would like to see that. I think that gives him ability. I think if you're going to give him a title belt, then that's a great beginning belt for him to win AEW.
Absolutely, because you couldn't see him going straight to the main event. I think that would take time and build, wouldn't it? You need to put quite a bit of time aside for Cardona.
100%. If you look at the other people they brought in, like when they brought in, oh god, it's gone. When they brought in Luke,
you're Brody Lee there, Luke Carter.
Yeah, sorry, Brody Lee. When they brought in Brody Lee, he was obviously more than Zack Ryder. He's not to be a main eventer, if that makes sense. Which I think this is a similar signing for AEW, but it's the right one. Out of all the releases, he was one of the picks, I would say.
Yeah, there's certainly something about Ryder, and as we say, that he's massively changed his look as well. He's beefed up massively. He's got a point to prove, and I think that's something that in our conversation we feel here, that he's got something he can really offer. I think Impact have got some great signings as well out of it, and we will be touching on Impact Wrestling later on with the EC3's Eric Youngs. It feels like a lot of people have points to prove, but Matt Cardona coming into AEW, and like we said, he potentially could bring the Internet Championship back. I mean, it would be fun to have, there's some belts coming in. We've got the FTW Championship that we had from Taz back in the day. Now we could have the idea of the Internet Championship. It would be something different as well to throw back. If you had something as an internet program, we've got Being the Elite anyway, so maybe something in that you could feature like a title match or something crazy. I mean, there's so many different realms and ideas of what they could do with this. So I'm excited to see what Cardona could bring to the table. And by the sounds of it, it sounds like you are as well.
Yeah, 100%.
100% indeed. Well, I'll tell you what, we shall move on from AEW for the time being, because there is a lot of WWE news to cover, and WrestleVotes are a fantastic source and one that are very reliable, and they've got 2 bits of breaking news regarding pay-per-views. The first one's the Royal Rumble. Now, apparently, this was supposed to be announced early August, that we were going to get the details of the upcoming January event. Of course, annually, it's always in January, but the details are going to be held back. Now, you can't blame WWE for this at this particular time being. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We're not sure what the future is going to hold. And when you look at things, I mean, we've seen some of these performance center shows. You wouldn't be surprised if things don't go the right way. We could see a Royal Rumble in the performance center, which, to be fair, when you look at it from a fan's participation point of view, would be an absolute disaster. But I want to get your thoughts anyway, George. Do you think it's the right move they've delayed this decision?
Yes, I think it's a very sensible move. The last thing you want to do is promise the pay-per-view in front of fans and have to pull out.
No, absolutely. I think that's definitely the right move. I mean, they wanted to have SummerSlam in Boston up until a few weeks ago. They left that to the absolute last minute before they had to break away from that. But I mean, from gimmick matches, I mean, the Royal Rumble match is so special. From an audience participation, those surprise entrances, those returns, you know, sometimes just the magic of building a feud for WrestleMania. You want to hold this up as best as you can and try and have this with fans in some form of capacity. If we couldn't have fans back by January, would you still go with the event in the Performance Center, or say perhaps there was some hope that maybe with a slight delay it could work? Would you prefer to see it in like a February or March, should it be where we're still in this pandemic situation and fans can't be involved?
I think really, if you can delay it to February's kind of late. I would do. I think any more than that, you're not really giving enough build, and run up to WrestleMania. You need, I think, 2 or 3 months after the Rumble really to tell the story and card ready for WrestleMania, apart from the main event.
Now, I think you make a great point there. I think, to be honest, I agree with that wholeheartedly. But like you say, February probably would be the latest they could do it. I mean, WWE wants to have fans back in by the fall. Of course, that's the autumn for us in the UK and Europe side of things. But do you think that that's a bit ambitious at this point? It seems to be that we seem quite far off from when maybe we can do. I mean, you look at other sports like football, or if Americans want soccer, we still seem to have empty arena shows or empty stadium shows where we've pumped crowd noises. NBA has come back this week, no fans in attendance at the moment. I know New Japan has had one event, I think Dominion had some fans in attendance, but I haven't heard anything going on with that since. What are your thoughts with the ideas? I mean, we just don't seem to know, do we, what the future brings with fans right now?
Yeah, I can't see fans back in WWE, unfortunately, this year. I think based on what AJ Styles has said today in the reports as well, it's likely, I think probably the only part maybe next year if we're lucky, but clearly WWE are really missing the fans. You can tell when you watch a product, they wrestlers and the whole of the show is kind of missing fans at the moment.
It really is. It really is. I mean, we do have these fans that are sort of sitting in the stands or the performance centre fans. And I must admit, 1 or 2 of them, they're a bit lippy. I do like it, especially for Drew McIntyre's stipulation the other week. Eye for an eye. I thought that was a very nice little dig at the company, really, if we're being brutally honest. I thought it was quite fun. But when we look at things from this standpoint and point of view, it's going to be interesting to see where it's going to be going forward. But we'll touch on the other Wrestle Votes tweets that have also been put out, that we're going to get another event on August the 30th, a pay-per-view event that's been added to the WWE calendar. The only funny part is it's 1 week after SummerSlam. Where's the build? But it's not going to be a pay-per-view maybe like Evolution that we're kind of hoping for. There apparently was a little bit of talk earlier in the year that could have been the show. But instead we've got WWE Payback. It's making a comeback, but I'm not sure I want it to. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a very odd way to have a pay-per-view 1 week after. A couple of ways they can do this. I'm guessing Sam is maybe going to have a few cliffhangers and matches at DQ, which maybe going to hit the week after. For me, I'm not a fan of pay-per-view 1 week's build. I think it's very cheap. I think it doesn't really any interest. Unless you're going to do rematches again, I just don't see how this works really. Or sort of considering SummerSlam's meant to be a place to settle feuds, it's not really restart ones with 1 week's build.
No, I agree. It's very, like you said there, it promises almost a rematch city, which I don't think is what we necessarily want to go down with because we get so many rematches anyway. I think some of those matches have been done at more than one pay-per-view already. If you look at, for example, The Fiend and Braun Strowman, we expect to go in that direction. Payback, well, I mean, we've kind of had would have had 3 goes at it by then. You'd think that someone would have got the feud and the victory at that point. But I guess, like you say, there could be some other cliffhangers in some other matches, and perhaps there is an excuse to do that. But if we're being brutally honest, George, I had just a little idea of this concept, because I think Payback, I think we've looked back at it, the glory point of Payback is 2017, and I'm probably not painting it in glory when I say that, is that the House of Horrors match we had with Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton seems to be the most memorable thing I can think of a Payback event. If we were going to bring back an event, do you not think we could have brought something perhaps a bit more fun? Maybe like a Cyber Sunday would have been a bit more better, something with fan involvement. Do you think that would have been a good idea to bring in for 2020 instead of having, a lame B pay-per-view in the likes of Payback?
I agree with it. I think the problem is the only way I can really get this whole sort of situation of a pay-per-view 1 week's build that would work is that they would have renamed this event King of the Ring and done a King of the Ring tournament for one night. I think that makes sense. You ultimately would have elevated wrestlers. You would have created a new for Drew or Randy Orton or whoever. But I agree with you. This would have worked, but I prefer a King of the Ring really. I think the only way you're going to do a payback really or payback event should be with an event, a one-off event where the real sort of follow up, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I just have a problem as well with the name Payback. Even Starcade, they do the yearly house show as Starcade. I would have even preferred that at this point, rather than Payback. It just was a bit bland. But like you say, go on. Sorry, George.
Yeah.
Take over.
Sorry. All I was going to say is look at the name Payback. It ultimately means that it's meant to be revenge. So really, it should be used as something to settle feuds. They got in a week to basically settle a feud. They haven't got time really, unless it's going to match again that we saw previously.
Absolutely. It does scream rematch city, unfortunately. But you mentioned King of the Ring. I think that would be a fun concept to bring in there at some point, like a yearly event. I don't necessarily want to see the crowns come back, though. And King Corbin's got that gimmick. I don't necessarily want to see it taken off him. He kind of makes it work well enough, but I don't want to see superstars keep changing it. Do you prefer King of the Ring in a format where they have the crown, or do you prefer it where you look at certain superstars and you turn around and say, right, okay, like in the late 90s, for example, Steve Austin won the King of the Ring, Triple H won it, and they didn't have the gimmick. Brock Lesnar was another one as well. They just carried on with the momentum and they got the title shot. Do you prefer that format, or do you like them to carry the royalty gimmick with it as well?
I think you just want the title shot. That's what it's about, really. I really think it would be cool if nowadays just refuses the crown. I think that's what you got to do, really. I think it's a cool thing. It's not just a crown, isn't it? Ultimately, whoever wins King of the Ring, elevated up the card, and they're going to get a title shot. It's usually somebody you don't expect, which is quite nice to see.
Absolutely, indeed. I couldn't agree with more of that. But we will move on back to This Week in Wrestling and back to the news as well. We mentioned SummerSlam a minute ago, having a pay-per-view 1 week away. Early this week, I did touch on it on the Raw Review. If you haven't checked it out, go and check it out now. Go and check the Raw Review. Check other SAW videos as well. The Q&A is available there for you. And in fact, we even had a podcast from last week judging what matches we wanted for NXT and for SummerSlam. But we mentioned SummerSlam there. There is rumours going around that they want a different location. We've already mentioned the Performance Centre kind of being a bit of a dud for some pay-per-views, especially as all shows are in the same place. There's been rumours that we could get it on a boat or a beach. George, I wanted your thoughts on this for this particular show.
Yeah, okay. So, a couple of things. If it's on a boat, surely that's a pop at Jericho's cruise. That's what I got straight away. I think it's a cheap shot, which I do like it, though. It'll be different. On a beach, though, you've got to go back to Bash to the Beach 95 WCW. I'd love to see it on a beach. It's something different. The fact is, now we haven't really got any matches that have been announced that are potentially outside of the arena, if that makes sense, the Performance Centre. I think if they're going to do match after match, really, it'd be great to see an outside environment. It's different, and this will stand out. This will sort of make up for the fans not being there, in my opinion. The fact you've got a background to look at while the wrestling's going on, if that makes sense. There's stuff they can interact, throw sand in their eyes, they could do whatever. But hopefully a boat or a beach, I really hope that happens. It will make the pay-per-view feel different. You're making the pay-per-view a different event to all the others that have been in the Performance Centre so far. It's actually different.
Absolutely, it's a standout. And I must admit, I only watched Bash at the Beach this year on the network from '95. I must have watched it probably, I want to say, a good few months ago now. But I remember watching and thinking, even though the card and the matches themselves weren't necessarily the strongest, I was enamoured with the surroundings of the water and the beach. And of course, there was lots of fans there as well, but we wouldn't be able to have that this time around. But like you say, there's so many different ideas and things you could do with it if it's on the beach, like I say, with the sand. What if it was on a boat? I mean, WrestleMania this year was supposed to be pirate themed. They didn't get a chance to use a lot of that sort of props that they may have had for it because it had to be in the Performance Centre. And, well, I mean, as well, Eye for an Eye was last month, and Aleister Black as well has been taken out. Why not get a few eye patches on there? We can have a Pirates match. What do you reckon? Paul Burchill would be loving life, wouldn't he?
Yes, yeah, Paul Burchill would. I'm guessing Sean Pierre make a cameo as well. But no, I would like to see that whole theme. Let's see. I really hope they do something like that. Maybe you'll just get a match on a boat this week. But I believe when I see it, I really hope they're going to do one of the two. But I think we're probably going to get an arena, unfortunately. I hope I'm wrong.
Well, apparently, the latest breaking news that I've heard from is that WWE want to have something finalised. They are actually meeting today, but they are finding it harder to find a location than what they were hoping to. So it does suggest that it's not concrete. And if they wanted to pre-record it, they're going to want to try and do it sooner rather than later. So that does suggest that they probably are in some form of a race against time to find what they're after here. I hope it's the beach element if I was to choose one or the other. But I mean, I did see the kayfabe news suggesting a submarine. That would be something a bit daft, wouldn't it, as well? Can you imagine the snorkels? That would just be entertaining in itself. But
can you just imagine? Can you just imagine it? You can imagine the whole sort of Braun versus Finn match and the Finn at the water or something like that. It's wrestle crap, isn't it? I think it's got to happen, really.
It is wrestle crap. It's wrestle crap that would be entertaining as well. Like you say, 2020 has been a baffling year in general, and a lot of things have not needed, we've kind of excused explanation. WWE pay-per-views that massively go in that bracket. We've only got to mention the horror show. So to do something like that at SummerSlam, it would have been out of the realms of the craziness of what they're doing already.
Yeah, no, I think it would fit, definitely.
It certainly would. It's a bonkers environment. But we keep mentioning the idea of SummerSlam and stuff. And we mentioned Aleister Black just a minute ago and his eye patch. Aleister Black is a character that You feel now it's potentially been written off this week on Monday Night Raw. He has been given the latest eye treatment. Murphy was the guy to do it. And it looks like that Aleister Black is going to be written off of TV at this point. Now, the rumour mill suggests, and I've got a few various sources from this, but I'm going to go with Wrestle Talk as the source for this particular one, has suggested that Aleister Black is well liked by Vince McMahon. So when I said in my Raw review that perhaps Vince isn't a fan and the main event push is never going to come, maybe scrap that. He likes Aleister Black. The problem is he doesn't like the gimmick. That's the problem. It's not the performer. It's not the guy. It's the gimmick he's portrayed for the last 4 or so years. And that is the problem. And maybe now he's going to be repackaged. I wondered what your thoughts on this are, George, because have you been a fan of the way Aleister Black has been booked, particularly in the last 18 months, but if not his entire tenure with NXT and WWE?
I think if we look at it, Black in NXT was booked absolutely amazing. He came up to the main roster, even up until recently, up until when Paul Heyman unfortunately was let go of. He really kind of fell sort of down the card quickly. But I think it's essentially, if WWE are only going to continue sort of bearing him week after week, this journal could work. I really think he could work as a heel though, which obviously maybe not going to happen. But yeah, I think a new gimmick could work for him. I think particularly if Vince isn't going to push him based on all Paul Heyman's hard work review.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is for me that I look at it and say with Aleister Black that he's got such a unique look and such unique attributes that he brings to the table. So in some ways, I must admit, I'm a big fan of his work and I can see him as someone that could carry the company. I think he stands out. You could put him on a poster. People would go, wow, that's different. I've got to check this out. But when you look at Aleister Black and you look at his booking over the last sort of maybe year to 18 months or so, I mean, this year has not been too kind to him on the booking standpoint. He's been thrown off the roof, the headquarters, along with Rey Mysterio. That's not really a good look for you. And he's been losing a couple of matches and losing a bit of steam recently. If you look at his booking last year, he was waiting for someone to knock on his door. He must have loved Halloween trick-or-treats, but he wanted someone to pick a fight with him. And I mean, for me, I just felt that was a very, very lazy way of booking. It was okay for the first few weeks, but then it kind of dragged on for about 6 or 7 months. And I found myself quite frustrated with that. I wonder if the main roster booking, again, the creative, is what's been the problem here for Aleister Black.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a very good point you raise about the whole sort of, I think the main thing I think that's frustrating with Aleister Black is none of his own fault. Is the way he was in NXT. He was the champion there. The fact that you continue getting these transitional champions from NXT that come up that get lost. What does that say to anybody that's in NXT now? You really don't want to be promoted, do you? There's no incentive to go up to the main roster now almost.
No, not at all. I mean, there's a reason, I think, why the Undisputed Era, perhaps Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, they don't seem to be keen to come up, and you can't blame why when you see this. And Aleister Black as well was kind of brought in that shuffle of when Gargano, Ciampa, and Ricochet were brought up because we just need some NXT guys to freshen things up because the ratings were bad at the time. And Ricochet's kind of fallen off the edge, and now Aleister Black has been the last one to suffer, but he's been the one that suffered here. But maybe, just maybe, we could be about to see an even darker side. You mentioned a heel run there, George, and I want to bring up his Instagram account. So I'm going to have to knock my head down for a minute because I'm going to need to do some reading for you. But this is what's been posted by Aleister Black on his Instagram account. There is blood on my shoes, and I understand I have to take accountability in this. But let me tell you a story. See, my father was a cruel man, and he was cruel because his father was cruel to him. So I created a narrative that evil was a perspective as it means to not be like him. But now I must rewrite 4 years of my own history by getting rid of that weakness. That same weakness has caused this betrayal. This is where my accountability ends and yours starts. So it feels like we could be getting a very darker side of Aleister Black going forward. And perhaps he's going to have no remorse going forward, and he's going to be a cruel and evil man. It screams that maybe we could get this heel turn maybe with Aleister Black in a different direction.
Yeah, I don't really see it, unfortunately. I think the natural is really for him to try and get revenge now on Seth Rollins. The problem you've got is because he's done the whole eye thing again now, the gimmick with the eyes. That does mean that obviously Aleister Black are going to be off for a ridiculous amount of time now as well, which it's a shame really. But I think a heel turn down the line would make sense. Let's get the Seth Rollins feud done first. Could you see Aleister Black back as soon as SummerSlam? Because they're building, the fact that the roster's so short of people at the moment, I think they'll chuck him back on the side in some sort of match with Dominic and Seth.
It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me because we have a number of weeks still till the show. I think we're now about 3.5 weeks away, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, Rey Mysterio was out for a month with this eye injury. Of course, now his eye's popped out. You imagine it's going to be longer. But Aleister Black wasn't down that route. It was kind of just his eye got injured. Humberto Carrillo, I think, was gone for around a month as well. So there's no way that Aleister Black couldn't make his comeback for SummerSlam in a Pirate versus Pirate match. I don't see why it couldn't be done.
Yeah. Pirate versus Pirate. Yeah, no, maybe, but I agree, definitely.
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. But whatever happens, I think both me and George would say to those that are listening to us here today that we want to see Aleister Black push higher up the card. And we hope amongst his comeback that things will go better in the writing side of things for him. But we mentioned again, and we're going to roll this on again into WWE Creative, so we still may touch on Aleister Black here. Vince McMahon has blamed creative as of loss of ratings in recent times. So my feeling here is, George, the platform is going to be yours on this. What do you think is the lack of ratings? Is this just a smokescreen? We've seen the likes of Paul Heyman get the chop. Other people get the chop, Eric Bischoff as well. Is Vince McMahon just using excuses? Are we really going to get new, better storylines, new characters? Or is this just all a lot of bluff at a conference call?
I think let's be honest, a couple of things. If back at sort of the great years, the Attitude Era, WWE were getting like 11 million fans watching every single Monday. They're now down to 1.5 million fans. So that's a lot of people to stop watching wrestling. And I think a lot of it is down to it's not the crowd not being there. It's down to poor booking. If you look at the way that these are thrown together, rematch after rematch, there's quite a few sort of angles, like the hacker that get dropped. It's very hard really to have that in WWE to be able to produce a storyline that's compelling as well. I think that they're going to get fans back and people on board that are non-wrestling fans really make it a captivating, riveting show week by week rather than just match after match with the same sort of outcome really, the same people getting pushed. Like this, WWE haven't really created a lot of new stars. They've never really replaced the Steve Austins, The Rock, the Triple H's. They've never really replaced people. You've got people like Drew McIntyre, Randy Orton are doing the best they can, but Randy Orton's been there for years. If back at when WWE was doing really well in the ratings, Randy Orton was there. He's basically on top again now. It's gone full circle almost. That's what I about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Randy Orton's first title reign was in 2004. So, I mean, we're going back 16 years there. It's a long, long time, like you say, and we're going full circle here. Drew McIntyre, I mean, I think he's doing a great job. They're trying to build that new star. I wouldn't say that he's necessarily at that level, like you say, like a Rock or Steve Austin, anybody like that. But I say he's probably doing better than Lex Luger would have done at his push in '93. Whereabouts would you put Drew McIntyre on a course of booking, of being over at this stage? Where would you rank him in amongst of champions? Is he somewhere in the middle, or has he got that potential to be next level, like a Rock or an Austin?
I think he's Shawn Michaels 1997. I think he's clearly the best fit at the moment. He's got that. He's basically carrying a lot of the pressure of the champion because he's actually bringing credibility to the belt week by week. But that's the trouble. WWE just all they go on about really is the past. Everything's the past. All they go on about is sort of even Randy Orton's promo this past week. It started off the legends such as The Rock and all sorts. But the problem is if you're going on about the legends all the time, how are you hoping to build new stars? And the problem is when you stop starting these wrestlers all the time, it's just so infuriating. Really, if you really look at the fact that at least Paul Heyman, who's running Raw, was trying to build new stars, whereas now all we're doing is the same people. Despite Randy Orton being probably one of the best wrestlers of the year so far, I think it's all they seem to be able to do is focus on one or two wrestlers at a time now, which is probably why they're sort of stifled a bit.
Absolutely, because if they put their time in those one or two wrestlers and they're not the ones getting over, they're not really building a plan underneath. There seems to be so many start-stop pushes, and not to make a bit of a joke of this here, but Vince McMahon has said we need to constantly create new stars all the time and new pushes and new ideas. But those ideas seem to last for about 3 weeks, and then they've got a new idea, but they seem to forget the person they were pushing before, and their push is taken away.
I think the trouble is we're kind of stuck in a really weird time with this whole COVID situation. No fans are really, really scared to do new stuff in terms of big angles like the hack lot. I can't see them going to do these big angles until the fans are back, which we're kind of in catch-22 now. WWE will just roll out this TV weeks in advance, and it's all predictable until maybe the fans come back. Because even when the fans do come back, how are you going to get them hooked? How are you going to bring back the million fans you've lost already? It's probably not going to happen, is it? Let's be fair.
No, perhaps not. But, I mean, you look at this and say to yourself that when it comes to, like, building those stars going forward and you look at other shows, AEW haven't stopped what they're doing. They've continued building. Yes, we've had a few debuts and sadly, they've not had their moment in front of people. Drew McIntyre, he won his championship in front of nobody, but they haven't really built further on that. Should they have gone down like the AEW route where they've just continued? I mean, even NXT has continued. Keith Lee won the championship with no one there. Should WWE look and say, look, we need to just push on and carry on, and when the fans come back, they'll still be happy, and maybe we'll have a way to actually, increase those numbers up.
I get it. I think the trouble is, unless these people that are going to be involved in the lines down the line are on mega money, such as Brock Lesnar or CM Punk returning, them people where you need a crowd, I don't get why you're not running captivating angles and storylines with the people you've got on the roster. I think the whole sort of invasion thing with NXT WWE, that's a prime example. There's stuff like that. They've got this luxury. They've got one of the best rosters they've ever had. So there's no reason why they can't put great storylines even without fans being present, in my opinion.
I completely agree with you. I think that they have so much talent there, people that can make a promo. And this is the other thing as well. I want to touch on this idea as we talk about promos and the ability of people that can deliver them. But a lot of things are scripted, and maybe they're too scripted. I mean, Eric Young has been very critical of WWE, and particularly Vince McMahon. I mean, obviously for himself originally saying that if you can't find Eric Young something to do for 5 minutes per show, then you're doing something massively wrong. But I mean, when you look at a promo, Jon Moxley, when he's left and said everything was micromanaged, and both guys have said that the problems start at the top. Do we need to have where creativity is better, or do we need where Vince McMahon perhaps trusts the talent a bit more to get themselves over rather than having something heavily scripted? I
think the finish, Vince McMahon, as much as it's going to have to sort of let somebody else take over and sort of come up with some ideas, I think there's trouble in WWE. Ultimately, you build people, you give them a great gimmick. Primarily, you mentioned Eric Young there. When Eric Young was coming off his run with Sanity, they were one of the hot stables in WWE at that point, or NXT at that point. They came up and got destroyed in 2 or 3 weeks. It's the same with Authors of Pain. Authors of Pain were a fantastic tag team. They came up on the roster and they're destroyed within weeks. It's just a running theme. I think the trouble with is there's far too many people on creative, but Vince ultimately does really what he wants, which doesn't really help, I think he's a bit out of touch. I think the problem with it, the only way you're really going to get things better is if Triple H is running probably full time, like basically sort of he's got the overall say. But I get it. The thing is, it worked in the 80s. Why doesn't it work now? But for me, it's frustrating really seeing all these lost opportunities. A prime example, this past week on Raw, we had sort of the main event angle ruined by Randy Orton's promo where they won about, I challenged Drew. Well, why do you want to watch the Drew versus Dolph match then? There's no point to it. I mean, they've got to start thinking about these things, about sort of just these simple mistake making, which make the show sort of a bit skippable really. Because I know this past week there were so many fans in that final hour, which is kind of surprising considering of the rest they had in that last hour.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose people stuck around with the Oscar Sasha Banks match. That perhaps was a thing to bring people in with that angle. But like you say, they already knew what was going to happen with Drew and Randy Orton. I mean, yeah, sometimes you're telling people, so they're kind of, oh, well, something must happen with these two, and we need to see what's going to happen and how great's that. But like you say, simple booking is just have an RKO after the match, not mention something earlier in the show, and then boom, you've got like a hot angle rather than just, I saw that coming. Because you kind of, I suppose the idea is I'll stick around to see if it's going to happen because I've got an idea an RKO is coming. But isn't it much nicer to go, oh my God, that happened. I didn't see that coming from anywhere. Literally, it came from nowhere. And you say to yourself, my God, I need to know what's going to be next in the story. Where now you kind of go, yeah, I predicted that. I wonder what next predictable step of the story is going to be. And that sometimes is generally how, I mean, I personally feel, and I know how you feel with WWE as well, that there's a real predictability factor in places. Now, don't get me wrong, not everything's predictable. Not a number of predictions get wrong here and there. I probably get some things wrong weekly. I've probably done it during this podcast. But you look and say to yourself that with these certain little details, that WWE could, like you say, they just can go back to simple booking and effective booking rather than overcomplicate things. Just do things simple. Like you say, if they want to build Randy and Drew, just have that point where, you know, Randy comes in and you get that whoa factor rather than going, I saw it coming.
I think it's more the fact that you got a world title match on Raw, yet you're putting out them basically in the first 5 minutes of the show, which is why would you want to see the main event? That's just like that, really. But I get it. It's tough times at the moment, obviously, with everything's going on. I appreciate you are still running shows. There is some positive to the product, but I just think what I find lacks is there's no real mystery or intrigue for me. You're not really watching. You're just watching it week by week, hoping it gets better, rather than believing generally in your heart it's going to be like, wow, it's going to be like what it used to be almost.
Absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Raw was actually a fairly solid show this week. I actually preferred NXT to AEW this week. So it's not really a massive dent on the entire WWE product. It's just a case of the fact that we feel that creatively I mean, with what they've got, they should be doing better. And they shouldn't just necessarily be doing better. It should show from an audience point of view. We've had, an opportunity, like you say, we're very grateful that these shows continue, but these new stars need to be built. We need to find a way where they're going to break through. And like you said, Vince McMahon is someone that perhaps is maybe someone that should step aside. And you said maybe someone like Triple H. But is it a factor that perhaps too many old heads are invited, not to really be disrespectful to anyone on in their age, but you look at the demo, and we talk about the demo god of Chris Jericho, AEW does very well in that younger demographic, where WWE is about the 50s and overs, or the people that have been following the product for 20 plus years, like yourself and myself. And do they need to find ways where they, have these younger writers or these people with younger ideas, that where there are people that are younger, that are sort of in those younger years, to think, well, this is quite cool to watch pro wrestling. And then all of a sudden they fill in those demos. It feels like the people that maybe they want to attract, they're having trouble making that their target audience.
I'm just saying this, literally when we was kind of younger and when we used to watch the Attitude Era, we peak basically. And obviously, I just remember watching through them eyes, feeling that age. And I used to be excited about every show. I would watch every chance I would get to watch wrestling. I would stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning, go to school with no sleep, just to be able to find out what was going to happen. You wanted to buy the magazines, you want to basically get invested. But I think the trouble is now, maybe dirt sheets as well available. I think there's a lot of intrigue that's gone because all the spoilers are out. As I said, you knew that Randy Orton versus Drew was going to happen for the last 6 weeks, which it's a shame really. In the old days, you never really could the way they were going.
Absolutely. And I think fans are a lot smarter as well. You look and say back then, perhaps we were younger and we were like maybe 10 years old, 12 years old, and you thought, God, this is really cool. This is, and you didn't see what was happening because it was new, it was fresh. Now, I think if you've been following it for 20 years, you see the pattern, you've got the idea of where it's leading to, where it's going to go. And you can say, like you say, I mean, I would have predicted before the dirt sheets that Randy Orton and Drew, the second Randy Orton won at Backlash, she went, well, he's got to be the guy at SummerSlam. And Drew, well, he beat Bobby Lashley at the time. And once you hear, Dolph Ziggler's the next guy, it's quite clear. And the Big Show is his target. You know that they've got to be paired up in some way. So perhaps there needs to be more creativity in how they get from those guys to the next story. Maybe it's just logic, and we see the logic a lot easier, and it makes the job harder for WWE to have to try and make it really innovative and shock value for us fans. Maybe there's something with that as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the last thing I'm going to kind of say on the topic for me is I think the lack of actual number one contenders is the trouble. When you look at the roster, it would really be 1 or 2 people, which means they haven't built up enough people to be genuine title contenders. What they need to start doing is having title matches where tender is generally a threat to the title, because you don't want to be going in for you going, oh, I know Drew's going to win this. I know Drew's going to win this every single month, because it's just basically too easy. It's too predictable.
Absolutely. I mean, it doesn't matter what the title reigns are like. It doesn't matter if it's a month, 6 weeks, 6 months, or a year. I want to feel every time that they go into a match, I want to think, he could drop the belt here. Will it or won't it? You want to have that real unpredictability factor. So I think it's a spot on point that you make there. Before we leave the show, we'll tackle one more topic for us this week. And we're going to be talking about Wrestle House, Impact Wrestling. We need that impact dose into this podcast. And I mean, for me, I need to know your opinions of this Wrestle House, because for me, it was genuine wrestle crap, but I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fun from start to finish. I think you've got all these wacky characters in one house. It's clever being away from an empty arena. We mentioned empty arenas in these shows already. And the idea now that we have these guys all in this one environment, there's some matches that are involved in it as well, some comedy. It kind of flowed all right for me. I must admit, despite it being absolutely bonkers and thinking, what the hell am I watching? I quite enjoyed it. George, can you give me your thoughts? Am I on my own, or is this all right?
I thought there was a lot of small digs to WWE, which I quite enjoyed. Yeah, it was good fun. I think that it makes great filler. It's something totally different compared to the other product that's out there. And I think it creates great filler, though, on the road to Balboa. I think it's good TV, really. I'm looking forward to seeing where they go and how they elevate matches format. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it's going to be special to see how they do it. And just for a few people are wondering the core, if they've not seen it, should I go and check it out? The initial plan of this was that Rosemary and Johnny Bravo, Rosemary wants to get Bravo on his own, but he's always been paired with Taya Valkyrie, and they're in this house, and they wondered how they got this house. Taya had managed to get hold of this house so that they could stay in there, but she was going to stay there as well, to the unhappiness of Rosemary. So she decided, well, if you're going to be here and we don't have our time alone, we're going to make things uncomfortable for Taya as possible, and we're going to bring all these different characters in and amongst this area. So we've got the smiley Kylie Ray in there. We've got, hi, I'm Susie, who just seems to be very schizophrenic at the particular moment. We've got, the likes of the Dinas, who just have to swig and drink beer all the time. We've got, all these different weird, crazy characters. Crazy Steve, who used to be a part of the K team with Rosemary as well. So you had all these different dynamics thrown into this one area. And then all of a sudden, people are wondering what they're doing there. And all of a sudden, we find out that really, the way that Ty got hold of this house was from the host of this idea of Wrestle House, which is Tommy Dreamer. And Tommy Dreamer, I think, was absolutely electric in his role. Like you say, a lot of these quibs at WWE, all these different ideas of what they threw themselves together, and elements of comedy that they threw in, with superstars going, what am I doing here? You could win $1 million in this house, and just ideas as well as something that they could do with ECW money before his checks bounced. I loved the little quib of where, there was going to be a fallout in this Wrestle House with, I believe, the Triple XL and the Dinas, and we saw that Susie asked for a truce between the two teams, and one of them says, "No way, Jose." And you find Tommy Dreamer say to himself, well, we didn't sign him from WWE on those releases. I thought very clever, very funnily touched together, and everything just seemed good. We got matches built because they need to find rooms to sleep in, and there's not enough beds. People wrestling because they want to sleep in the ring. And you had this big ring outside to create those matches. And you got matches you never think you'd see, and it was weird, it was wacky, but it was wonderful. And I just think to myself, I thought it was really good. I want to know just a couple of your highlights before we go off and go to the world of Twitter, because I've got a few reactions from people from Twitter that I'd also love to give a shout out to as well.
As you said, I think you hit the nail on the hammer. The particular No Way Jose thing, that had me fall off my chair. I thought that was really clever. I really like the whole way that they go to the match, the way the Dinas had that match as well. I thought that was clever. I just like the way you're getting all these people TV, and they're all getting TV time, which is really clever in the background, really.
Absolutely, because none of them main eventers. They're all these middle people as well. You've not got your serious characters. Everyone's got a role in that way. And you sit there and go, well, Taya's the normal one in amongst this. And she's going, well, what's going on? Like we are. And it's just that idea of everything. It's just weird and wonderful. I want to see if people can get voted out week after week. If there's going to be some sort of way where we get a tournament and people get chucked off of the Wrestle House. But it's great. It's great for the mid-card area to give these people TV time. And what's perfect as well is rather than seeing an empty arena for 2 hours, well, we've got these segments filling in places here and there to break up the show, give you something a bit different. And we have got it in 2020. Had this pandemic had happened, not happened? Probably not, but we've got it because of this. And it's a creative way that Impact Wrestling are not afraid to think outside the box. They've never been afraid to. You look at Ultimate Deletions and stuff like that, these, cinematic matches, in the modern eras, they started in Impact, and it feels that they found another twist and direction to do so. And I think that was a job well done for them, and I'm genuinely excited to see where it's going to be going forward, despite the fact they've been the weird and wonderful.
Yeah, I can't wait to see next week. Yeah.
No, neither can I. Well, I tell you what, let's go into Twitter. What did Twitter think? I'm going to bring a couple in there. We've got Whitebeard Brad White, who's got a comment for us now. I'm going to give him a shout here on SCW. He said he's very picky about this comedy in wrestling, but he loved this, mainly because of Tommy Dreamer. Kills me with his only present host. Also, so many Heyman jokes, like you said there, so many digs at WWE, and also with Paul Heyman there and amongst it. Completely agree with that one. Absolutely brilliant. Bedlam Media has said that he popped for the No Way Jose line, and they absolutely love that as well. And we got also a mention from Triple Threat Review, who said that they loved Wrestle House and they thought it was hilarious stuff. We got a bit in between as well. We got one in between from Wrestle Jim, who said that someone who only recently started watching Impact Wrestling, his main reaction was, what the hell is this? Which I can understand. If you've not watched the product before, you're not aware of a lot of these characters, but perhaps what's great about it is that you're going to get a chance to learn these characters very quickly in a weird and wacky way. So hopefully, if you give it another chance in the next couple of weeks, you might find yourself growing into it even more. There is always that possibility. But we have to go with the flip side as well. And Brandon, who I thought was actually a very nice way. We mentioned about the No Way Jose part here. He's gone on to say his part here on Twitter and saying, in his opinion, it was a disrespect to Jose. The guy is great in the ring and an audience behind him. Hopefully, some promotion will realise his talent and sign him. Do you think that No Way Jose, with a change of gimmick and a change of attitude, maybe a different environment, perhaps he would prosper?
Yeah, maybe. I think I think he deserves a chance. I think it's not his fault that WWE destroyed him since he got up, really. I think it'd be great, hopefully, out of this, that if he does get another somewhere else. Maybe NWA Power, if it comes back. I think he could fit in there.
He could fit in an NWA. I think that would be a good environment. Maybe Ring of Honor as well when they start back up. I mean, there's always a chance as well. He could be a challenger for the TNT Championship. Never say never. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah. But I think that's all we've got time for today, George, on the show. So I want to say thank you very much for coming on. Is there anything you'd like to say just before we close off?
No, it's been a fantastic show, having me on again.
Yeah, it's really good to have you on as well, George. Thank you for being a part of it. Thank you to everyone that's been watching as well here on SCW. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Please like, share, subscribe, share with a friend as well. And This Week in Wrestling will be back next week. We're going to start to try and make this a weekly thing, just talking about a few topics from the world of pro wrestling and putting it into one little show that you can look forward to each and every week. But that's all from us anyway. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time here on SCW. Take care. Thank you very much.